I think as part of the process of handling a cancer diagnosis, especially one that's difficult, there is the question that arises, and at least in my mind, I'll speak for myself, is what did I do to cause this? And, were there things in my life or my lifestyle that could have been changed that would have changed this outcome? And I asked those questions after my initial diagnosis at age 43 with 6 children, ages 2 through 17 at the time, and getting diagnosed with high-grade urothelial cancer, which, if it was metastatic, had a very poor outcome. The survival statistics at that time were 5% live about 1 year. So, fortunately, after my first major surgery, radical cystectomy, prostatectomy, removing the bladder, part of the section of the ureter, and the prostate, creating a new reservoir out of intestinal tissue, we thought we had it all. And it wasn't until 10 years later that it became a metastatic urothelial high-grade cancer situation in which I was facing a 5% chance to live. And Memorial Sloan Kettering, of who I am still a patient at that time, advised me to go home, call hospice. And like a year later is all throughout, because in that 2015 surgery, my doctor had cut away everything he could see. And about a year later, it had all come back, and it was all throughout. So that diagnosis of, did I do anything to cause this? And some people look at smoking and being overweight, or just all kinds of reasons. And yet there are so many rule breakers out there. Like when I was at Sloan Kettering, I met a vegetarian marathon runner who had the same cancer that I did, and little children running around, just rule breakers all over the place. And in fact, my diagnosis was a rule breaker because this is a cancer that affects usually men in their 60s who had smoked, worked around chemicals. And I was a very healthy individual, good weight, always working out, eating well, and was 43 years of age. So, but the other thing was this: I was a Christ follower, and my mom had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer a couple years earlier. And so I was trying to figure, in my mind and my heart, my soul, how does this make any sense, Lord? And so as I look back 21 years later, and this helped me at the time, what I figured out was that it had filtered through God's hands first, that no matter where the harm came from, the enemy, like in Job's case, or Paul with the thorn in the flesh, or a broken body, brokenness, sin, whatever it was, that this had filtered through God's hands first, that I was his child, I was owned by him. That's what the scriptures say, that you've been bought with a price. And so that's where I was at. And so I was like, okay, Lord, you own me, and yet you allowed this to filter through your hands. What does it mean? And as I did my cancer journey, because I didn't understand why I had it, where it was going, the purpose and all that. And in the midst of my whole cancer journey, my marriage ended, and some other things happened with addiction with one of my kids, and so there were major walls going on. And one thing that I learned for myself was that I would daily and sometimes momentarily say to God, I surrender this to you. I surrender it to you. I just felt so out of control and just so many questions in my mind, but really believed that there was a higher power, and mine was Jesus. And so it was my situations, I would just say, I surrender this to you. Surgeries, I surrender this to you. I mean, over 50 surgeries now, and counting. I have one in August. It's a procedure, but it's I had to go into the surgical center and go under, and they call it a surgery, so I do. But 7 years of immunotherapy treatments and scans and radiation therapy and all that stuff. Twice being told to go home and die. I surrender this to you, God. I surrender this to you, Lord. I surrender it to you, Jesus. And then, Lord, help me. Give me the peace and the comfort and the strength to go through this. And he has. Here I am. I'm going into my 22nd year now. But almost. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 22nd anniversary. Is that right? No, maybe, I don't know. But I'm in my 21st year, 22nd year. But anyway, I surrender this to you, God. I surrender it to you, Lord. And there's a lot of things I don't have answers about with my journey, but I do believe in a higher power, Jesus, that has a greater purpose in all this, and I may not see the fullness of that. Thank you. Blessings.